Cole had been in dangerous situations before rattlesnake bites, overturned ATVs, a horse with a broken leg thrashing in panic, but nothing twisted his stomach like watching the color drain from Lena's face. She sat slumped against the cottonwood trunk, breaths growing shallow, eyes unfocused. Her body was fighting the venom and losing ground fast. He pressed 2 fingers gently to her neck. Her pulse fluttered like a trapped bird. "We don't have time," Cole muttered. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't want her hearing the fear in it. His eyes scanned the land automatically, calculating options. His truck was miles away at the far end of the lower pasture. The nearest ranch hand was even farther, and the town doctor? A full 40 minutes if the roads cooperated, longer if the old bridge was out again. And Lena didn't have 40 minutes. She barely had 10. Her hand reached out suddenly, clutching weakly at his sleeve. "Cole, I'm dizzy." He moved instantly to kneel beside her. "Stay with me. Look right at me." He cupped the back of her head gently so she wouldn't slump forward. "How long since the sting?" She blinked sluggishly. "Couple minutes?" "More like 7, he guessed. And the reaction was accelerating. "Where exactly did you drop the injector?" he asked. She pointed vaguely toward the thick brush where her horse had spooked. "Somewhere? There. It fell out when I grabbed the reins." Cole followed her gesture. The brush was nearly waist-high, tangled and dense enough to hide a dozen lost items and twice as many hiding spots for angry wasps. Even if he found the injector, it might take 5 minutes. Or 20. Too long. He looked back at her. Her skin was getting pale, but the welt on her thigh was flushing deeper, a frightening contrast. She winced and shifted, fingers pressing the spot as if she could hold the pain still. Cole's jaw tightened. "All right. I'm not leaving you alone out here, not even to look. We do this ourselves." Her eyelids fluttered, opening just enough to meet his. "How?" He slipped a hand under her shoulder and helped her sit more upright. "I've dealt with stings before. Not this exact kind, not this bad, but there's a treatment I know. Something my grandmother used when we were too far from town to get help." Her voice trembled. "Will it work?" "It gives us a chance," he said honestly. "And right now, we take every chance we get." Her breathing hitched as another wave of heat radiated up her leg. He felt the tremor run through her when his hand brushed her knee. She wasn't shivering from cold. She was shaking from the venom hitting her system. Cole grabbed his canteen, uncapped it, and poured cool water onto a folded cloth. "I need to slow the spread," he said. "Cooling helps. Pressure helps. And I'm going to check for any more stingers." He pressed the cold cloth below the swelling first, grounding her. She inhaled sharply at the contrast relief mingled with pain. "That's cold. That's the point." He watched her carefully. "Tell me if you get more lightheaded." "I already am," she whispered. Cole swallowed hard. He couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't ride her out. He couldn't search the brush blindly. It hit him then. There was only one path left, a difficult one, an intimate one he would never choose unless necessity forced his hand. He set the cloth aside and leaned in, his voice low, steady, meant to anchor her to consciousness. "Lena, listen to me. The swelling is rising fast, and the sting is too close to an artery. I have to treat it directly. It's the only way to stop this." Her gaze flickered with fear of dying, fear of vulnerability, fear of everything happening too fast. But then she reached for his wrist, fingers trembling. "Do whatever you have to," she whispered. And with that fragile thread of trust tying them together, Cole prepared to do the one thing he never imagined he'd have to do to save her life. Cole had handled medical emergencies out on the ranch before, but this was the first time the situation demanded something so delicate, so fraught with unspoken boundaries. And the universe, with its cruel sense of humor, had decided the sting would land in a place that made everything 10 times harder, high on Lena's inner thigh, far too close to where her femoral artery pulsed beneath the skin, Too close to ignore. Too close to treat without invading her privacy. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps. She leaned her head back against the rough cottonwood bark, eyelids heavy, as if each blink took real energy. The heat of the swelling had crept upward since the last time he checked, spreading in a way that made his stomach twist. Cole took a slow breath, forcing his own panic down deep. "Lena," he said gently, "I have to check exactly how far the swelling has spread." She tried to steady herself, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "I know." The simple acceptance in her tone hit him harder than he expected. She trusted him. She had no choice but to trust him, and Cole felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. He pushed a soft, folded blanket beneath her hips and legs to keep her steady. "Tell me if you feel faint. Or if your breathing gets worse." "It already is," she murmured with a shaky attempt at humor. "But I'll try." Gently. He placed 2 fingers on her lower thigh far from the sting site, pressing lightly to gauge the heat and swelling beneath the fabric. Her skin was burning hot, temperature rising far too quickly. He moved higher, carefully, giving her time to react if she wanted him to stop. Lena flinched not from his touch, but from the pain radiating outward in bright electric waves. The venom was working fast. "Sorry," Cole murmured. "It's not you," she breathed. "It just hurts." He nodded, jaw tight. He could see the fabric of her dress stretched over the swollen area, but the placement was so high and angled that trying to treat it over the fabric wouldn't work. The venom would continue to spread. And if the swelling closed off the artery, she could lose consciousness or worse. Cole exhaled slowly. "Lena, the sting is higher than I hoped." Her eyes cracked open. She already knew, but hearing it aloud made her swallow hard. "So what now?" "Now I need to get to it directly." His voice stayed calm, but inside, every nerve felt stretched thin. "Cooling it, removing any remaining venom, applying pressure, it all needs to happen on the skin, not through cloth." She blinked, forcing focus. "Is it that bad?" He didn't sugarcoat. "Yes." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Only the rustling of distant cattle and the buzz of insects broke the stillness. Lena's chest rose and fell unevenly, her breath shallow and tight. Then she did something that made his breath catch. She reached for his hand, gripping it with surprising strength for how weak she looked. "Cole," she said softly, "I know you wouldn't hurt me, if this is what will help." "Then do it." The trust in her voice was almost staggering. She wasn't giving permission lightly. She was giving it because she believed he would never take advantage of her moment of vulnerability. He tightened his grip around her hand, grounding them both. "I'll be careful," he promised. "I'll tell you before I do anything. And if you want me to stop at any point, you say the word." She nodded faintly. "Okay." Very carefully, Cole reached toward the hem of her dress, fingers trembling just slightly, not from hesitation, but from the enormity of what he was about to do. Not for himself, not for any reason but one, to save her life. And as he prepared to lift the fabric, he whispered a silent vow to himself. No matter how impossible the spot, no matter how difficult the task, he would not let Lena down. The late afternoon sun lay warm across the Maddox Ranch, throwing long shadows from the cottonwoods that lined the creek. It was supposed to be a simple day. Work nothing more complicated than moving a small herd from the lower pasture to the ridge before the weather shifted. Lena had only been on the ranch a few weeks, but she was determined to prove she could keep up with the others. She rode a little behind Cole Maddox, studying the way he handled everything: his horse, the cattle, the land itself, with the same steady confidence. Out here, Cole seemed part of the landscape, like someone carved from the same stone as the cliffs rising in the distance. The air was calm, the herd moving smooth as molasses until it wasn't. One calf bolted into a patch of tall brush, startled by something Lena didn't catch. Cole signaled to her, a quick motion of his hand asking her to circle around and ease the calf back out. She nodded and nudged her horse forward, weaving carefully through the thick undergrowth. At first, she heard nothing unusual, just the rustle of dry leaves and the rhythmic creak of saddle leather. Then, a faint, angry hum rose from the ground. She froze, leaning forward instinctively to look for the source. The hum grew sharper, louder, more insistent. Before she could even register the danger, the world erupted. A swarm of wasps, disturbed by her horse's hoof or perhaps the calf's frantic dash, shot upward like a cloud of living needles. Something slammed into her thigh, sharp and burning, and she gasped, gripping her saddle horn. Another sting hit her calf, then another. Her horse danced beneath her, ears pinned, sensing her distress and the chaos around them. Lena's breath hitched as the burning spread through her leg. She swatted blindly, trying not to fall, but the pain stabbed so suddenly and so fiercely she nearly slid from the saddle. "Cole!" she shouted, her voice cracking. He wheeled his horse around instantly. One look at her and he spurred forward, closing the distance in seconds. Cole didn't waste time asking questions. One glance at the swarm still hovering angrily around her stirrup told him everything he needed to know. "Jump!" he barked. "Now!" She slipped one foot free but couldn't move the other. The pain shot up her leg like fire, and the world tilted. Cole reached her before she could fall, arms closing around her waist with a strength that felt like salvation. He lifted her clean off the horse, shielding her body with his as he swatted the last persistent wasps away. Her breath came in shallow bursts. "My leg, it's swelling." Cole lowered her gently to the ground under the shade of a nearby cottonwood, his hand steadying her as she winced. Already, he could see the problem. A nasty welt ballooning beneath the fabric of her dress, growing redder by the second. And the look in her eyes, wide, frightened, told him this wasn't just an ordinary sting. Cole crouched beside her, voice low and steady. "Lena, listen to me. Are you allergic?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, I have a pen in my bag, but I dropped it." "Somewhere back there." Cole's jaw tightened. The closest road was miles away, and the swelling was rising far too fast. Panic flickered in her eyes, but Cole's hand found her shoulder, grounding her. "I've got you," he said, firm with conviction. "We're going to handle this right here. I promise." And as she tried to breathe through the pain, Lena realized she believed him more than she believed her own strength at that moment. Cole had seen wasp stings plenty of times working cattle, but never one that swelled this fast or on a spot this dangerous. The welt on Lena's upper thigh had ballooned to the size of a plum. The skin stretched tight and angry red beneath the fabric of her dress. It throbbed visibly, pulsing with every beat of her racing heart. And the worst part was that he couldn't see the full extent of it, not without lifting the hem where she clutched it tensely, knuckles white, as if embarrassed even now. "This isn't normal," Cole muttered, more to himself than to her. Lena's breaths were short and ragged. She tried to sit up straighter but faltered, gripping his forearm. "My chest feels tight," she whispered. That was the sign he feared most. Her allergic reaction was setting in faster than he expected. He glanced toward the trail they'd come from miles of uneven land, gullies, and brush. Even if he rode at full speed, he couldn't get her to town quickly enough. And searching for her injector on foot through the thick brush? Impossible. Every second lost meant the swelling spread further. Cole steadied her shoulders. "Look at me, Lena. How many stings?" "One big one on my thigh," she managed. "A couple on my calf. But the one on top, Cole, it burns like it's spreading." She wasn't exaggerating. The skin around the main sting had already begun to flush upward, rippling into new areas. Her pulse was thready beneath his fingers. Sweat glistened at her temples even though the shade cooled them. Cole didn't let her see the fear tightening his jaw. "All right," he said, forcing calm into his tone. "We're doing this the hard way, but the right way. First, I need to check how bad it is, how far the swelling's gone." Lena looked away, swallowing hard. There was worry in her eyes, but not only because of the pain. This was vulnerable, uncomfortably so. She wasn't used to needing help, let alone this kind of help. "I know," Cole murmured, reading her hesitation. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary, but if the swelling creeps too far or hits the artery—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. She understood. She nodded, barely. "Just tell me what you're doing before you do it." "Always," he promised. Her trust hit him harder than the urgency of the moment. He'd hired her because she was tough, determined. Now he was seeing the softer truth beneath, that she was brave, but not unbreakable, and she was afraid. Cole slid his hand beneath her knee, lifting her leg gently so he could examine the bites on her calf first. 2 small welts, already red, but manageable. Not the real danger. Her breathing hitched as he lowered her legs slowly back onto the blanket he'd rolled out from his saddlebag. "All right," he said quietly, moving to the real problem. "Just breathe. I'm going to check the upper sting." Her hand tightened in the fabric of her dress. "It's higher," she warned, cheeks flushing. "I couldn't reach it." "I know," he said softly. "You're doing great." Carefully, he placed 2 fingers just above her knee, watching her reaction. When she didn't pull away, he pressed lightly, feeling the heat radiating through the thin cotton. The inflammation was spreading upward. Too fast. He exhaled sharply. "Lena, it's worse than I thought." Her eyes fluttered, panic sparking. "What do we do?" Cole looked straight into her eyes, steady enough for both of them. "We stop it, right now. Even if it means doing something neither of us expected today." And as another wave of pain tightened her jaw, Lena nodded once. She trusted him. Cole had made difficult decisions before. He'd put down animals he'd raised by hand. He'd helped pull neighbors out of overturned trucks after flash floods. He'd spent a night once carrying a wounded Mustang across 2 miles of rocky ground when every step felt like walking on broken glass. But this was different. Because this choice involved Lena, and it involved her trust. Her breathing had grown shallow enough that he counted the seconds between each inhale, waiting to hear if the next one would come. Sweat dotted her brow. Her fingers twitched weakly against the blanket. The welt on her inner thigh had gone from red to a furious, dangerous shade of purple, pulsing in a way that tightened his stomach with dread. Cole knew the venom was spreading faster than he could control from the outside, and the position of the sting left him almost no options. If he didn't act now, she could slip into anaphylaxis. If he acted too slowly, she could lose consciousness. If he acted at all, he risked crossing lines he never wanted to even approach. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, grounding himself. Think clearly. His grandmother's voice echoed in the back of his mind, the memory of her strong hands treating him when he de-stepped on a hornet nest as a boy. Get the venom out, slow the swelling, keep the heart steady. Do what has to be done, even if it ain't pretty. It had sounded simple at 10 years old. It wasn't simple now. He opened his eyes and met Lena's gaze. "Lena," he said quietly, "I'm going to tell you something you're not going to like. But I won't do anything unless you understand exactly why." Her lashes fluttered. "Okay." The word was barely a whisper. "The sting's too close to your artery," he continued. "The swelling is pushing inward, not just outward. If it keeps tightening, your blood flow could get cut off." He swallowed, forcing himself to stay clinical, factual. "If that happens, you could lose consciousness before I get you anywhere close to help." Her fingers curled, gripping the blanket. "What do we do?" Cole hesitated only for a heartbeat, because the truth was uncomfortable. There's only one way to drain the venom, ease the swelling, and stop it from spreading farther. His voice softened. "I have to treat it directly. I mean, directly on the skin." Not over fabric. Lena didn't speak at first. Her chest rose unevenly, breath hitching. A flush of fear crossed her face, not fear of him, but of the vulnerability the situation demanded. "Cole," she murmured, voice trembling. "I know what that means. I know you do." He kept his tone steady, gentle. "And I wouldn't even be saying this if there was any other option. If the sting were 2 inches lower or higher, or if you weren't reacting so violently, I'd find a workaround." He shook his head. "But I don't have one." For a moment, neither of them moved. The world narrowed to her ragged breathing and his pounding heart. Then Lena exhaled shakily, her eyes glossy with pain and fear and a fragile kind of resolve. "Will it help?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "It could be the difference between you staying awake or losing consciousness before I can get you to safety." Her eyes closed briefly, as if searching inside herself for courage she wasn't sure she had left. When she opened them again, there was a quiet decision settled there. "You're trying to save me," she whispered. "I know that." Her voice was steady despite everything. "If this is what it takes, do it." The words hit him like a blow. Not because of what they allowed, but because of the weight of trust she placed in him. Cole's hand hovered above her leg, still hesitant despite her consent. "I'll be careful," he murmured. "I'll tell you every step before I take it. And if you want me to stop even for a second, you say it. And I stop. Understand?" She nodded, jaw tight with pain. "I understand." And with that, he made the unthinkable choice, not because he wanted to, but because her life depended on it. For a moment, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. No rustling leaves, no distant lowing of cattle, no buzz of insects. Only the wind moving through the cottonwoods and the fragile thread of silence between them. Lena leaned back against the tree trunk, her body trembling not from cold but from shock beginning to creep in. Color had drained from her cheeks, leaving her skin pale except where the allergic swelling bloomed angrily beneath her dress. Cole could see the way her chest rose too fast, too shallow, her lungs struggling to keep up as her body fought the venom. He knew what was happening. He'd seen it before. And he knew what came next if he didn't act. He braced one knee in the dirt beside her and took a slow breath. He needed to be steady, unshakable. If he faltered, even for a second, she would feel it, and fear was the last thing she needed clouding her already fragile focus. "Lena," he said gently, his voice low enough to anchor her, "before I do anything, I want you to tell me one thing clearly." She blinked at him, unfocused. "What?" "That you understand what I need to do," he said, holding her gaze, "and that you want me to do it." Her breath hitched a tiny, involuntary sound. "Cole, I already said—" "I know," he interrupted softly, "but this isn't something I'm taking lightly. I need to hear it again, from you, while you're awake and aware. So there's no doubt." The sincerity in his words pulled something gently taut between them, something rooted not in the moment as intensity, but in respect. He wasn't asking for permission out of fear of being misunderstood. He was asking because her dignity mattered, even in a moment where her life hung in the balance. Her hand trembled as she lifted it. She reached for him, but missed, too weak to guide it. Cole caught her hand mid-air, his fingers wrapping around hers to steady it. She squeezed feebly, but with intention. "Cole," she whispered, "I trust you." The words were soft, almost fragile, but they struck with the weight of iron. Her gaze held his, unfaltering despite the fear simmering in her eyes. "I know you're trying to save my life. I know you'd never use this moment against me." Her voice broke slightly, but she pressed on. "So yes, I want you to do what you have to do. I'm giving you permission." Cole swallowed, the lump in his throat tighter than he expected. He shook his head once, not in refusal but in admiration laced with worry. "You're braver than you think." A faint ghost of a laugh escaped her, more exhale than sound. "I don't feel brave. Bravery isn't about feeling it," he said softly. It's about choosing trust even when you're scared. Her fingers slackened in his, and for a heartbeat, his chest tightened in fear she was slipping away. But her eyes stayed open, focused on him, grounded by the steadiness in his voice. He squeezed her hand once. "Lena, I'm going to lift your dress now, slowly, only enough to reach the sting." "Nothing more." She nodded, jaw clenched as another wave of pain rippled through her leg. "Okay, I'll talk you through every movement to start." Cole had treated injured animals, helped ranch hands with cuts and sprains, and even stitched up his own arm during a storm once. But nothing, not a single emergency in his life had required the precision, gentleness, and emotional steadiness this moment demanded. Because this time, the patient wasn't a ranch hand or a struggling calf. It was Lena, someone who had come to his ranch trying to build a new life, someone who trusted him when she had every reason to panic. And the venom in her system was spreading too fast. Cole steadied himself, grounding his breath. He lifted the hem of her dress only as far as absolutely necessary, just enough to reveal the swollen, inflamed welt high on her inner thigh. His throat tightened at the sight. The skin around it was flushed dark red, nearly purple at the center. The swelling had spread well beyond the original sting point. "All right," Cole murmured, forcing calm into his voice. "I see it." Lena closed her eyes, breathing unevenly. "How bad is it?" She whispered. He didn't want to scare her, but she deserved the truth. "Worse than before. But you're still awake, and that gives us time." She nodded faintly, gripping the blanket beneath her. "Just tell me what you're doing." "I will." He reached for his canteen again, soaking a clean cloth in cool water. As he pressed it gently around the swollen area, avoiding direct pressure on the sting, Lena gasped softly, her breath trembling. "Sorry," he murmured, adjusting the pressure. Cooling helped slow the reaction. "It's okay," she whispered. "It just stings everywhere." Cole watched the skin carefully. The heat radiated outward, but it eased slightly with the cold cloth. Good. A start. He then inspected the welt more closely, checking for any signs of a stinger. "I need to see if the stinger's still in," he told her. "Will that hurt?" she asked. Only for a second. He steadied her knee with one hand and used the other to press gently around the center of the swelling. She flinched hard. "Cole, I know," he soothed. "Deep breaths." "You're all right." After a moment of searching, he found it. A tiny dark barb still embedded, the venom sacs empty but the stinger continuing to irritate the tissue. His jaw tightened. "Found it." Lena swallowed. "Can you get it out?" "I have to," he said. "Once it's out, the swelling should slow." He grabbed a small pair of tweezers from the emergency pouch he kept tied to his saddle. His hands were steady, despite his pulse thudding hard in his chest. He positioned the tweezers and spoke softly. "Okay, I'm removing it now. Just breathe." Lena inhaled sharply as he extracted the stinger in one smooth, clean motion. When he held it up to show her, she managed a weak nod of relief. "Good," she whispered. "Good," he echoed, though his mind was racing. Step one done. Now came the harder part, slowing the venom spread. His grandmother had always sworn by a field remedy, pressure, cooling, and a poultice made from crushed leaves that neutralized venom naturally. He reached for a small tin in his bag, the one he rarely used, containing dried herbs meant for exactly this kind of emergency. As he mixed the herbs with water into a cool paste, Lena watched him through half-lidded eyes. "Where'd you learn all this?" she asked weakly. "From the toughest woman I ever knew," he said, softening at the memory. "My grandmother. She saved me more times than I can count." He applied the paste gently over the swollen area. Lena inhaled sharply, her fingers curling in the blanket, but didn't pull away. "That should start cooling it from the inside," Cole explained. "It'll feel strange at first." "It's okay," she murmured. He wasn't sure she even felt more than the pain anymore. but she stayed still, trusting him entirely. Cole kept one hand on her lower thigh, monitoring the temperature and swelling carefully. Minutes passed, long, tense minutes, but the color around the sting slowly began shifting. The purple softened to red. The heat lessened. Her pulse steadied just a fraction. "Cole," she whispered, her voice thin but clear. "I think it's helping." He exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Good. Stay with me, Lena. You're doing everything right." And for the first time since the sting, he believed she was going to make it. The initial danger had passed, but the battle wasn't over yet. Lena's breathing was uneven, shallow, and ragged, the adrenaline from the sting giving way to fatigue and lingering fear. The venom had already begun its rapid march through her system, and though the immediate threat of unconsciousness had been held at bay, the effects of the reaction still coursed through her veins. Cole knew that staying calm, steady, and close was as important now as any treatment he had applied to the sting itself. He positioned himself beside her, close enough to monitor her breathing and pulse, but careful to give her a measure of space. His hand rested lightly on her lower back, steadying her and offering comfort without overstepping. The warmth of his presence alone seemed to help, as if his calm energy could counteract the fear pulsing through her system. Lena's eyelids fluttered, a faint tremor running through her body. "I feel strange," she murmured. Her voice was small, almost lost, but she managed to meet his gaze. "Everything feels wrong." "I know," Cole said softly. "Your body's reacting, but you're okay. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." His voice carried a firmness that anchored her, a quiet reassurance that steadied her in the swirl of panic she still felt inside. The swelling had slowed somewhat thanks to the field treatment, but the venom's effects were still being processed by her body. Her leg throbbed, the tenderness making her flinch occasionally. Each involuntary movement reminded Cole that even though the sting was treated, she was far from recovered. He gently adjusted her blanket, making sure she remained as comfortable as possible. "Breathe with me," he instructed, drawing a slow, deliberate rhythm with his own chest as a guide. In and out. Just like this. Lena followed, albeit shakily, matching his rhythm with shallow, uneven breaths. It was a small victory, but a meaningful one. Every coordinated breath helped keep her oxygen steady and her heart from racing further in panic. As the minutes stretched on, the exhaustion began to show more clearly. Her head lolled slightly against his shoulder, and he tightened his support, bracing her gently. "I've got you," he murmured, not as a reassurance but as a fact. He maintained his focus on her, reading every subtle cue in her posture, every hitch in her breathing. Any sign that the reaction might worsen would demand immediate action, and he was prepared. At one point, Lena's hand moved weakly, almost reaching for him before her energy faded again. Cole caught it, holding it lightly in his own. He didn't let go, simply providing that small, grounding contact. It wasn't just physical support, it was emotional, a silent communication that she wasn't facing this alone. Hours or what felt like hours in the tense haze of exhaustion and adrenaline passed this way. Cole stayed beside her, talking softly about trivial things at first, the way the cattle had scattered earlier, the stubborn behavior of the mule, even the smell of the earth after rain. These small observations distracted her mind, giving her a psychological anchor even as her body continued to process the venom. "I think it's easing," she whispered eventually, her eyelids lifting more steadily, her breathing gradually evening out. Cole's hand remained on her, but he allowed a small smile. "Good, you're doing great." Almost through this. The danger of the sting may have been halted, but the real triumph was the slow, painstaking recovery. He had held her, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally through the full weight of the reaction. His presence had been constant, unwavering, and that steadiness was as important as the treatment itself. By the time Lena's body fully relaxed, she realized something profound. The crisis had shown her the depth of her trust, and Cole had honored it completely. The swelling in her leg might have subsided, but another kind of connection, quiet, resilient, and rooted in mutual trust, had grown stronger in its place. Cole remained near, vigilant yet calm, a steady anchor in the aftermath of fear. And in that quiet, shared space, both of them understood something lasting had formed. The bond created not only by survival, but by the care, patience, and unwavering presence required to see each other through the darkest moments. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the ridges of the Maddox Ranch, painting the sky in streaks of amber and rose. By now, the immediate danger had passed, but the world felt oddly still, as if holding its breath for what came next. Lena lay on the makeshift blanket, bandaged and resting, her leg elevated slightly on a rolled-up jacket. The swelling had slowed, the redness still visible but no longer threatening, and her breathing had returned to a steadier rhythm. She wasn't fully relaxed, though. The adrenaline and fear still lingered like a stubborn shadow. Cole sat on the ground beside her, his knees brushing hers, silent for a moment, watching her carefully. The tension in his shoulders had eased slightly, but not entirely. He couldn't stop replaying the moment, the unthinkable choice he had been forced to make, the way her eyes had trusted him even when fear clenched her chest. He had acted with precision, with care, but it hadn't made the experience any less intense for either of them. "You're awake," he said softly, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of relief. "I am," Lena whispered, turning her head to look at him. Her lips curled into a weak, tired smile. "Thanks. I think I really mean that this time." Cole shifted slightly, making sure she didn't strain her leg. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I did what anyone would have done in my place." "No," she murmured, shaking her head faintly. "Not anyone. Not like that. You. You stayed calm, and you explained everything, and I don't know. I just—" She trailed off, uncertainty and vulnerability mingling in her voice. Cole reached out, resting a hand lightly over hers. "It's all right. You don't have to explain." His thumb brushed the back of her hand in a quiet, steady motion. "All that mattered was that you made it through." Her eyes softened, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. There was no awkwardness, no words forcing meaning into the silence, just a mutual recognition of what had happened. Something profound had shifted. It wasn't just about the sting or the emergency. It was about the trust she had placed in him and the weight of responsibility he had carried. It created a connection neither of them had anticipated. "I was scared," Lena admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "More scared than I've been in a long time. But I knew you wouldn't let me go. And somehow, that made it easier." Cole's jaw softened. "I won't lie, it was terrifying in its own way," he admitted. "But I had to focus. There was no room for anything else. And you made it easier by trusting me." She chuckled softly, a small, weary sound. "That's terrifying too, isn't it? How much we can trust someone in a moment like that." "Yeah," he said quietly, letting a small smile tug at the corner of his mouth. "Terrifying and powerful." The tension between them had shifted from immediate fear to quiet reflection. Both were aware of a subtle change in their relationship, a deepening respect, a bond forged in a life-threatening moment. Cole knew he had seen a side of Lena few people ever would, and she had seen his. Neither would forget it. Hours passed as the sun dipped lower, the light softening around them. Lena's breathing steadied even more, and the adrenaline that had driven her courage slowly ebbed. Cole stayed nearby, watching over her, offering quiet conversation when she wanted it, silence when she didn't. There was no awkwardness, only a careful, mutual understanding. Finally, she spoke again, her voice firmer now. "I guess I'm lucky." You saved me." "You're lucky," Cole replied, though his eyes conveyed more than his words. "But so am I. You trusted me when it mattered most. That doesn't happen often." She smiled faintly, letting the warmth of his presence settle around her. For the first time since the sting, she felt safe. And she realized it wasn't just physical safety. There was something else at play, something slower, subtler, swelling quietly in the aftermath. A sense of connection that neither time nor distance could erase. And in that quiet, sunlit moment on the Maddox ranch, both understood it. The danger had passed, but the bond they'd forged in its shadow had just begun. The night had settled softly over the Maddox ranch, cooling the earth and quieting the sounds of the day. The cattle were bedded down, the wind whispered through the cottonwoods, and the first stars began to shimmer faintly against the deepening blue of the sky. Inside his small cabin, the room smelled faintly of cedar and hay, mixed with the lingering tang of antiseptic and the herbal poultice Cole had used to treat Lena's sting. She rested on the cot he had prepared for her, wrapped in a blanket that still carried his scent, feeling the warmth of the fire on her skin. The swelling in her leg had nearly disappeared, leaving only faint redness and a tender reminder of what had passed. But Lena's attention wasn't on her leg. It was on Cole, sitting quietly across from her, leaning back in a chair, eyes tracing her face with that same quiet intensity she had noticed throughout the emergency. Something had changed, though neither of them had said it aloud yet. It was subtle, a pull she couldn't ignore. A tension that wasn't fear but something warmer, gentler, that had grown slowly during the crisis. She realized that the trust she had given him, so fragile and absolute, had created a new kind of closeness between them. A swelling of connection she hadn't expected, and yet it felt natural, inevitable even. Cole shifted slightly, finally breaking the silence. "You're doing better," he said softly, almost as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile peace between them. "No more swelling, no more danger." "You're safe," Lena nodded, watching the movement of his hands. She remembered the fear, the panic, and the helplessness she had felt when the sting first hit. But what stood out more vividly now was his steadiness, how he had never faltered, never hesitated to act, and had communicated each step with care and respect. The physical danger had ended, but the emotional resonance lingered, swelling quietly beneath the surface. I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice soft. "For everything. For staying calm. For not panicking. For being here." Cole's lips curved in a faint, self-conscious smile. "You don't have to thank me. I was just doing what I had to do?" "Maybe," she said, tilting her head. "But it was more than that. You made me feel safe. Not just physically, but," she paused, searching for words. "Everything. Like I could trust you completely. And that's rare." He nodded slowly, understanding. The words resonated with him too. He had felt it, that subtle shift from crisis to something deeper. Something that wasn't just relief or responsibility or adrenaline, but connection. A quiet bond that had grown in intensity as the danger had forced them to rely on each other, to trust without hesitation. Cole finally leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I felt it too," he admitted quietly. "During it. During everything, I realized that it wasn't just about keeping you safe. It was about us, somehow. About trust, about knowing we could depend on each other." Lena's lips curved into a small smile, fatigue and emotion mingling in her eyes. "It's strange," she said. "A sting, a crisis. And now, instead of being scared, I feel something else. Something stronger." "Yeah," Cole agreed. A different kind of swelling. He allowed himself a brief laugh, shaking his head. Not physical. Not painful. Something that grows slowly, quietly, but just as real. They sat in silence for a long moment, listening to the fire crackle, letting the words and feelings settle between them. Outside, The ranch lay peaceful, the stars shining down as if bearing witness to the bond forged in the midst of fear. And in that quiet cabin, with the threat of danger behind them and the future still uncertain, Lena and Cole understood that some things, like trust and connection, could grow stronger in ways neither of them had expected. That swelling, the invisible kind, was just beginning, and neither of them wanted it to end. It was not just relief or gratitude that lingered, but something enduring, subtle, and profound. A swelling of the heart, a quiet trust, and a bond that neither danger nor time could diminish.